Hello everyone, it's M.S.G, hope you're doing well, and today I'm going to be doing my review of Huron's Marauders, one of two new detachments that the Chaos Space Marines have had recently, with the new models that they've been releasing recently with Huron and a couple of others. But with that said, let's just get into it. So first of all, the video is just going to cover a brief description of the actual rule. So it's called Tyrannical Motivation. In addition, it'll also include the standard review process, each individual enhancement, stratagem, any combos or anything particularly highlight worthy rather in the detachment, I will go over, which will include units. In addition, I'll also include the strengths and weaknesses of the detachment, so where it shines and where it doesn't, or it might need a bit of help. And finally, I will include a list and an overall rating based on the information that I've shared. Fairly straightforward. If you wish to pause at any point during the video, feel free to do so. But with that said, let's continue. So first of all, we're going to review the actual rule, which is Tyrannical Motivation. It's essentially, in your command phase, select one of the following abilities. Until the start of your next command phase, each Heretic Astartes infantry unit from your army has that ability. At the start of each phase, if such a unit is visible to a friendly Huron Blackheart model, until the end of the phase, it has both of those following abilities. Huron's Elite. Each time a model in this unit makes an attack, add one to the hit roll, or Mobile Marauders. This unit is eligible to shoot and declare a charge in a turn in which it fell back. So the designer's note here, if a unit is gaining eligibility to shoot and declare a charge in a turn in which it fell back as a result of being visible to Huron Blackheart, but after making a fallback move it is no longer visible, that unit will not be eligible to shoot in your shooting phase or to declare a charge in your charge phase, unless it is visible again at the start of that respective phase. So I'll briefly go over that. Essentially what it means is, if you are in combat with a unit of legionaries, let's say, and you have a Huron nearby, you can see them, so you pick Huron's Elite and you get both of the rules instead. The legionary unit can fall back. They are now out of line of sight, so Huron cannot see them. So unless Huron moves up during the shooting phase or the charge phase, or at the start of the charge phase rather, and can see them there, you don't get the extra benefit of the rule, unfortunately. So for example, let's say Huron does a reactive move in the charge phase or his movement phase, and he gets into line of sight of him at the start of the charge phase. The unit won't be able to shoot, but it'll still be able to declare a charge. Essentially, so long at the start of the phase, if any time a unit is visible to Huron, you will get both the benefits of the detachment rule. But essentially, the +1 to hit, which is Huron's Elite, exceptional. It's really, really good. It doesn't specify melee either, so it works in range. So for example, units that are more shooting oriented, like Obliterators, Havocs and Chosen, sometimes Terminators, well, Chosen are a bit of a weird one, Chosen can do both. Terminators as well, they do like it, because they get full rerolls to hit anyway, so you're hitting on 2s, rerolling all your hits most of the time. Fantastic. Also works on damned units, so Traitor Guardsmen are now hitting on 3s, which is really good, surprisingly. In addition, for any heavy weapon within the unit, if they stand still, they're now hitting on 2s. So for example, Cultist Sniper Rifle, really good, you're now hitting on 2s. You also have the Melter Gun, Flamer, well that you don't really care about the Flamer, Grenade Launcher, Plasma Gun, all those things benefit from the +1 to hit, which is absolutely fantastic. Fallback, shoot and charge is very good, allowing you to disengage in unfavourable engagements and providing you with more tactical flexibility. Very similar to Thrill Seekers, so anyone who plays Emperor's Children, you are really going to like this detachment, because it essentially rewards you for, or enables you rather, to fall back and shoot and charge. Bearing in mind you will have to pick that rule in particular, so if you're not, let's say Huron's not within line of sight of the unit or vice versa, then you probably won't be picking Mobile Marauders, unfortunately. You're probably going to be picking the +1 to hit. It's very rare that you will need it, but it's there if you do. But again, fallback, shoot and charge is really, really strong either way. But yeah. And lastly, obviously, you'll still get your Dark Packs. So again, just extra damage on top of that, which is fantastic. Like sustained or lethal hits usually helps out quite a bit. In addition as well, the line of sight thing I find is quite interesting. So it's either really, really good, so you can sit Huron back in a sight line and just keep him, visually there. So if you need the +1 to hit, you've got it, or the fallback and shoot and charge, you've got it. But the trade-off is that obviously you can't see through walls and stuff like that. If you're on a terrain piece, then it means you can see everything on it. and out of it, but the problem is if you're on a terrain piece like Ruins, you can be shot at. So there is a trade-off. You probably don't want Huron to die either, because he is, despite being quite durable, he's not impossible to kill. But yeah, other than that, let's continue. So first up, we've got Voice of the Tyrant. There's 25 points. A Heretic Astartes model only, excluding Damned. Bearer's unit has both the rules from Tyrannical Motivation. Again, I've given it a 6 out of 10, so slightly above average. It's alright, it's okay. I think this is... half of the enhancements are really, really good, the other half are just there. And this is one of the ones that's just there, unfortunately. So 25 points is expensive, but this is nice to have. On a Terminator Lord, for example, here, like I mentioned, you'll still get the +1 to hit, and the full rerolls to hit in melee and at range. Granted, you will have to take 2 separate dart packs for that, because the Terminators, it specifies you'll get it in that phase, so you'll still need to take 2 dart packs. But having a Terminators be +1 to hit, full rerolls to hit in melee and range, fall back, shoot and charge, allows you to get out of tar pitting. You can move a lot quicker, so if you want to move out of combat and get into a terrain piece or get behind line of sight, you can do that. In addition to that, there's ways to get them on and off the board, because they are a deep strike unit. You can put them on the side and put them into strategic reserves on the side of the board with a stratagem, but I'll not spoil that, we'll get into that later. In addition to this, it can be given to a Lord Discordant or a Demon Prince, so they don't really benefit from the +1 to hit, because most of the time they're hitting on 2s anyway. But for a Winged Demon Prince, it's actually quite nasty, so fallback, shoot and charge can be quite helpful. You don't need Huron to see you, but given how, you know, pretty obvious Winged Demon Princes actually are, given how big the wings are, you're probably going to see him most of the time. Having that fallback, shoot and charge on a Demon Prince, especially, like I said, the winged one, you get the mortals on the charge, which is one of the main reasons why the Emperor's Children Demon Prince is so strong at the minute. That and the -1 damage, but again, you can have like a pseudo Emperor's Children Demon Prince with this. If you take the Marcus Lanesh as well, you can literally just have 14-inch mortal bomb, essentially, that you just throw at something. And obviously the 3 damage melee is really nice too. If I was to take it, though, I'd probably bring it on a Lord Discordant, mainly for the fallback, shoot and charge. The +1 to hit, like I said, it's not really relevant, especially when you're using a Bale Flamer most of the time, which is something I'd probably recommend doing if I was going to run a Lord Discordant. Obviously there's going to be times where you'll need that massive movement, so something like a Lord Discordant is just going to be really, really good for that. A Demon Prince with wings can do it as well, but the Lord Discordant, I find, is better into majority of matchups, given he's got a more varied melee profile. He has an extra point of AP on his melee, so it's AP 3. He gets Lance on the charge, which is really good. He can kill vehicles pretty well, compared to the Demon Prince, where it's just mortals and then potentially trying to get damage through. Other than that, though, I would say it allows him to, let's say you get engaged on all fronts and you've got, you know, either one of these units, you want to fall back and then just immediately move to another quadrant, which you're probably going to be able to do because the Lord Discordant is very, very fast. And obviously on the way you can shoot whatever you want, really, if that's nearby. And another thing I need to mention, obviously, it excludes damn models. That is a negative, not in its favour, unfortunately, but it's one of those things. But yeah, 6 out of 10, it's not bad. We have one of the auto-includes, in my opinion. This is Raid Leader, so it's only 20 points. Heretic Astartes model only, excluding Damned. Each time the bearer's unit is set up after disembarking from a transport that has made a normal move this turn, the bearer's unit is still eligible to declare a charge. I've given this a 10 out of 10. This is an auto-include, in my opinion. This is a really good enhancement, and I'll just gush as to why. I personally think this is one of the most well-balanced enhancements in the entire codex, or even the game, rather. It's not ridiculously overpowered. It's extremely good, to the point where you're not going to be complaining and thinking, oh, it's not bullshit, let's put it that way. It feels fine. It's thematic. It's priced very appropriately. I think 20 points is really, really good for this. And it's just a really, really helpful enhancement. So it essentially gives a unit that's within a Rhino, because it says a transport, it didn't specify Land Raider, the ability to make a charge after it's moved. So the Rhino obviously is a lot smaller than a Land Raider, which means it's a lot easier to hide. The Land Raider is granted tougher and a lot more shooty, but the Rhino is a lot... Well, you bring in a Rhino, it's 75 points compared to, what, 220 for a Land Raider. Put these guys in the Rhino, move 12 inches up, 3-inch disembark, so you want to make the most of that, and then potentially doing up to a 12-inch charge. So your average threat range for the Lord and the Legionary unit disembarking is roughly about 18 to 24 inch on average, as opposed to it being, you know, just the 6-inch plus, you know, potentially 12. So again, you're getting that massive increase in threat range. So you're not having to stage behind terrain now. You can actually, you know, if your opponent overextends and gets closer, they're going to be able to just jump out, run through the ruins, and just, you know, hit whatever they need to. The Rhino, giving them that essentially an extra 12-inch move, is ridiculously good in my opinion. For armies that are like your big units that are very killy, so like Chaos Knights, Imperial Knights, Greater Demons, any kind of monster list, so like Tyranids, even Catan, like any kind of, like, you know, big. Katana may be an outlier because they're a bit too strong at the minute, I think, but any kind of unit that can't go through terrain or ruins is going to struggle against this type of stuff, because your opponent wants to get rid of them and they're not able to, so they have to move the monster or whatever they've got out of the line of sight and overexpose it to the rest of your army. You might kill the Rhino, but at that point you've already overextended, and your rest of your army should be able to, you know, mop whatever it is up. Alternatively, they can just sit there, wait for you to move to them, and they won't expect you to move up to 15 inches and then charge them, which is fantastic in my opinion. That's one of the ways I would use it, as like a bait. So you basically just judge the range of where your opponent thinks they can get you, and you just basically get in the face, and there's nothing they can really do about it. And again, it's 20 points. You bring in it, it's an auto include. It's really, really good. I bring this on a Lord and a Legionary unit. If I were to run this, I'd definitely bring this. Next up, we have, unfortunately, going down on a peg a bit. So this is a 4 out of 10 enhancements called Dread Reputation. It's 25 points. Heretic Astartes model only, excluding damn models. Each time the bearer's unit is set up on the battlefield, each enemy unit within 6 inches of the bearer's unit, or within 12 inches if the bearer's unit was set up using the Deep Strike ability, takes a battle shock test. I've given it, like I said, a 4 out of 10. It's slightly below average. It's 25 points. So it's quite pricey, unfortunately, and obviously, you know, it's a battle shock test. Most of the time, the only way you're going to get modifiers is if you're going to have something like, I don't know, Noise Marines that have shot them the turn before. You drop these guys down, they're forced to take a battle shock test. Again, you can do this in strat reserves. There are ways to get this out, fortunately, so there's ways to play with it. I don't recommend bringing it, though. I think this is a one that you want to avoid. If you could bring it on Warp Talons, this would be a lot better, because then you'd have literally a battle shock test within 6 inches, or 12 inches rather, sorry, because the deep stroke, every single turn, which can be really helpful. But yeah, you can't, unfortunately. The only time I can see Warp Talons being brought with a Lord is in Nightmare Hunt, and this is just not the way to do it, unfortunately. Plus the Raptors, if you were going to bring a jump pack and a jump pack Lord with some Raptors are really good now in my opinion. The -1 aura is only 6 inches, so you don't get that, unfortunately. But yeah, other than that, it's just, if on the off chance that your opponent will fail the battle shock, it's a 4 out of 10, but most of the time it's not really going to be impactful. And it's also nice that it's the bearer's unit and not the bearer, which is really, really helpful, because it gives you that extra surface area to, you know, potentially get more people to fail a battle shock. Finally, we have another fantastic enhancement, in my opinion. Eager for Bloodshed. It's 30 points. Heretic Astartes model only. The bearer has the Infiltrator's ability. I've given this a 10 out of 10. So you can infiltrate a Lord Discordant, which is hilarious, might I add. And I have double checked this. So the main issue with the Lord Discordant is the awkward base size and the ease in which they can be moved, blocked, or screened, because it's such a big and cumbersome model, despite it being incredibly quick. If your opponent has infiltrators or scouts, they'll be forced to screen you, and if they do, they'll probably not be focusing the rest of the Corsairs Raiders, because you are going to probably bring 1 or 2. You also don't get the benefit of the detachment rule, as the Disco Lord is mounted and not infantry, so you'll not get the benefit of the rule, unfortunately. So the enhancement earlier that I mentioned is just not going to happen. However, with that said, I would highly recommend bringing this enhancement on a Disco Lord, as you'll definitely have a T1 charge on a very fast unit which can reliably kill vehicles and elites. If you can cripple your opponent early on and just kill a couple of important units, even like a transport or a tank or something like that, get rid of it, you know, in the first turn or the second turn, whichever you prefer, you're going to have a much higher chance of winning, because, like I said, you'll probably definitely get a turn 1 charge from this. In addition, it's the bearer, not the unit, so it can be used on a Lord. So the Lord can be brought with Red Corsair Raiders now, so they can be infiltrated, but obviously the trade-off is that the Lord normally doesn't have the keyword for infiltrate. Now he does, so you're paying 30 points for that keyword. The Lord can help, like it says here. The Red Corsair's Raiders only have access to a Power Fist and a Melter Gun. They also have 4 attacks each at Strength 5 -1/1 damage with Reaver's Blades, which they're actually pretty decent, but they're going to struggle into like T6 or higher. They're like skirmishing infantry. Demon Hammer Lord will provide a lot of damage on his own, and while he won't hit as hard as he would with Legionaries, who give him the rerolls to wound, and also have heavy melee weapons on top of that, as well as a heavy weapon like, I don't know, a las cannon, or a auto cannon or a chain cannon. The +1 to hit and infiltrate almost guarantees a turn 1 charge if you play it right, and obviously if you can stop scout moves as well with this, simply due to the fact that infiltrate kind of beats scouts. And it's very useful to, take the wind out of the sails for your opponent if they're relying on that. It is expensive though, 30 points. But in my opinion, you are going to be bringing it like this as an auto-include. I think it's really, really good. First up for the stratagems, we have Reaver's Flurry. Your fight phase, 1 Heretic Starter's unit from your army that has made a charge move this turn. Until the end of your phase, add 1 to the attack's characteristics of melee weapons equipped by models in the unit. I have given it a 9 out of 10. +1 attack for a 1 command point is very good, and obviously you'll be hitting on 2s, so it's very unlikely you'll be missing, and obviously to compensate for that, most of the time you'll be getting sustained hits or lethals, which means you will be hitting above average on, like, mathematically speaking, about 80% of the time. It's just really, really helpful. Anything with low attacks like your Demon Hammer Lords go 6 attacks anyway with sustained hits, and usually you get the +1 to hit, which means more hits, more damage, potentially more dev wounds. You can also use this for free if you've got the Lord of Chaos ability in the unit. So it's like a pseudo Creations of Bile Augmentation, +1 attack and +1 to hit on top of the. It's just a fantastic concoction of buffs. So +1 attack and +1 to hit is just really, really good, especially for melee units. Great on Warp Talons, so giving them 5 attack? Yeah, 5 attacks each, so an extra potentially 10 attacks, which is really good. Demon Hammer Lords, as I mentioned now. Terminators and Chosen really, really like this. Possessed as well, because obviously, the once per game dev wounds, you can just throw a boatload of attacks out, hit on 2s, get more dev wounds through. There's hardly any units that don't benefit, aside from the vehicles, obviously, because they don't benefit from a majority of the rules in this game, unfortunately, or the detachment rather. Works on damned units, so +1 attacks with the Cursed Cultist and Dark Commune are insanely strong for the value. So you've obviously got the Dark Ritual, which they can use once per game, which is pairing it with a +1 to wound and +1 to hit, and you get advance and charge on that, so you're saving command points for another stratagem, which I'll mention later. And offers a lot of threat range and lethality when you do end up in combat, because for Torments, I believe it's D6 +2, so now you're going D6 +3, and you just get an absolute boatload of attacks. I still think they are better in Chaos Cults. That's like their detachment, but they're still very competent here, in my opinion. They're still very strong. Doesn't specify infantry either, so this can work on Demon Princes and Lords, Discordants, etc. So in going from 5 attacks to 6 attacks potentially means 1 3-wound elite infantry is dead, or that little extra damage might actually kill a vehicle. So for something like a Rhino, which is 10 wounds, if you get 3 attacks through, that's 9 wounds, so he's on 1 wound left, whereas if you get an extra attack through, that's 12 wounds and he's now dead, which is really helpful. Finally, the only weakness only happens when you made a charge, so it's similar to how I would counterplay Blood Angels, and this is how I do it as an Emperor's Children player. If your opponent knows you can do this, they'll try and charge you first so they can deny the charge buff. So I do this with Emperor's Children when playing against Blood Angels. If you can take the wind out of their sails and hit them first, Blood Angels in that circumstance lose the +2 strength and +1 attack, which means that you can severely gimp them in combat when they do hit back. They might kill a lot of units, so it is one of those things, but in this circumstance it's better to, like I said, be proactive and not reactive. You want to get in there first to take that, take the initiative basically, and then figure it out when you're there. And that lesson applies to life in general, to be fair, but yeah, it's a very good philosophy to live by. Second, we have Hardened Killers. Command phase, 1 damned unit from your army, select one of the following effects. You can improve the ballistic skill characteristic of ranged weapons equipped by models in the unit by 1, improve the attacks characteristic of rapid fire weapons equipped by models in this unit by 1, improve the save characteristic of models in this unit by 1. Until the start of your next turn, your unit has the benefit of that effect. I've given this a 4 out of 10, so slightly above average. I might be underselling this one. but this feels like it's used for Traitor Guard in particular. So increasing the ballistic skill by 1 means that most of the time you'll be hitting on 3s. This also stacks with the +1 to hit, because it doesn't say it gives them +1 to hit. It improves the ballistic skill, and the +1 to hit is a modifier, so the ballistic skill modifier and the +1 to hit are separate. So you'll be hitting on 2s with Guardsmen, which is really nice. Sniper rifle, grenade launcher, melter or plasma gun will appreciate that extra accuracy a lot. And if you really want to give them a +1 to rapid fire attacks with the las guns, for example, you'll get a decent amount of strength 3 las gun shots going through, especially if they're within rapid fire range. Granted, they are only strength 3, 0 AP, 1 damage, but you know, when you throw, it's the same philosophy people use with the despoiler in Chaos Knights. When you've got that many dice coming your way, you're going to take some wounds, and you might potentially get lethals as well, depending on what dart pack you go for. So there is that. Traitor Guardsmen hit surprisingly hard as well. Another benefit as well, Traitor Guardsmen also get the benefit of cover if they're on an objective. So improving the save characteristic by 1 means Traitor Guardsmen are getting a 3-up in combat, in cover on an objective against 0 AP, which is insanely helpful if you really need it. So again, they are only T3 1 wound, so any kind of indirect fire or chaff clearing shooting is going to struggle them. So if you're going to sit there with a unit of 10 Guardsmen on an objective, just to, you know, because they are OC2, which is really, really nice. Cultists are OC1, these guys are OC2. Keeping them on the objective is really, really nice. So stuff like grenade launchers, indirect fire from like mortars, that normally would shred them, but because it's a 3-up, those people who you would be saving on a 5-up normally are now being saved on a 4-up or a 3-up. Cultists can benefit from this as well. Cultists have a 6-up save, +1 in cover. Cultists are now saving on a 4-up. Which, again, if you really need it and you need that objective, you know, secure, this is the way to do it. It's one of those things, you could probably put this as a 5 or a 6 out of 10, it just depends. But I feel as though the majority of the time you're not going to be wanting to use a command point to save your chaff for some more reliable saves. It's there if you need it. But, you know, it's better to have it, like I said in another video, it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. It also works in your command phase, which is a bad thing in my opinion, so you'll need to predict if your opponent is going to focus that unit or not. So if, like I said here, if you use this and your opponent just ignores the unit, so let's say I've used the +1 to my save and my opponent just goes, okay, I'm just not going to shoot them. Granted, that might actually help, and your opponent might be like, oh, I'm not going to shoot that unit, I'm not going to bother wasting my time or wasting my resources on it. That could in itself work in your favour in certain circumstances, but a majority of the time you've just wasted a command point. In addition as well, it's kind of useless on a Cursed Cultist because they have a 5-up invul. Unless you want to bring them to a 4-up in cover against AP0 maybe, but it's not really that helpful. It's there if you need it, I guess, but yeah, it's not a bad stratagem though. Third, we have At the Tyrant's Command. This is in your movement phase, and 1 Heretic Astartes unit, excluding monsters and vehicles from your army. Until the end of your turn, your unit is eligible to shoot and declare a charge in a turn in which it advanced. I've given this a 9 out of 10. Again, advance and shoot and charge is just super strong. I mean, look at Torpify and Refrain, like I mentioned here, with Marcus Lanesh. In Pack Bound, you get, you know, advance, shoot and charge on Terminators. It says unit as well, excluding monsters and vehicles, so this would include the Lord Discordant and a couple of others that I can't quite name off the top of my head, but it's no Demon Princes, unfortunately, and no vehicles, so your Lord Discordant, Possessed, really, really like this. Legionary plus Lords, again, it's advance and charge, it's just super strong. Terminators, like I said here, if you're playing Pack Bound Zealots with Terminator Brick, Marcus Lanesh, they just hit and move so fast, it's ridiculous, especially with a sorcery unit for the additional rerolls on both advance and charging. They're just really good. Like, this is just a very, very helpful stratagem. Again, the weakness, it excludes monsters and vehicles, so you can't use this on a Demon Prince with wings. So again, Chaos Demon Princes and Chaos Space Marines are just not that good, unfortunately. Excuse me. Not getting in advance and charge just limits the threat range. So again, like I mentioned earlier, Demon Princes in the Emperor's Children are arguably the best Demon Princes in the game because they get advance and charge and mortals on the charge, and obviously the -1 damage. Chaos Space Marines, it feels as though they're like the less successful cousin. Like, they're still competent, but they're not outstanding. But in addition as well, it would also be nice to have this on a Rhino. So if you need something like, once you've disembarked with the unit that has a raid leader, you can then advance and charge a Rhino. That would have been nice. you know, just a move block or something. So like I've said here, when I play Emperor's Children, I sometimes advance and charge, and then tank shot my Rhino to move block a unit or do some mortals to something. So being able to advance and shoot on something like a Vindicator and Predators, like you can in Renegade Raiders, would be exceptionally nice. I'm sure people who have played Renegade Raiders can agree with that comment. Having a Vindicator with a 24-inch cannon range, just being able to advance, get, you know, assault on range weapon on the Demolisher cannon, and get the extra AP for shooting on an objective is just super strong. You can't do this in this detachment, I'm afraid. Finally, and to its massive credit, it's really good on Obliterators. They're very good in Renegade Raiders and Veterans of the Long War as well. So while Veterans of the Long War offers you the change to give them full rerolls to hit, I can't get my words out today. Renegade Raiders, it gives them Assault, which means that they get an extra D6-inch threat range on the guns. Obviously, you can advance and then shoot after you've advanced. Having the chance to do that here is wonderful, as they'll have access to fall back, shoot, and charge as well. So potentially you could advance, shoot, charge, get stuck in combat, and if you do survive the punch back, you can then fall back and get some extra movement doing that, and then, you know, still shoot for free pretty much if you choose that one. On top of that, you obviously get the +1 to hit base kit anyway, so being able to advance and shoot at, you know, hitting on 2s with Obliterators, you can keep them behind a wall, on a table edge, advance them up, shoot whatever you need to kill, potentially kill it or at least severely cripple it, and then, you know, next turn you can just move out of the way and go back into strategic reserves, which is something I'm going to mention later. But this is a 9 out of 10. This is a very good stratagem. So this is to the favoured the spoils. Your opponent shoots in phase just after an enemy unit has shot one Heretic Astartes unit from your army that has lost 1 or more wounds as a result of those attacks. Your unit can make a surge move. To do so, roll 1d6. Models in your unit move a number of inches up to that result, but your unit must end that move as close as possible to the closest enemy unit, excluding aircraft. When doing so, those models can be moved within engagement range of that enemy unit. I've given this an 8 out of 10. I think this is great. A surge move is always really strong. So your opponent, if you've advanced and you've moved a unit up, they probably think, it's not a great idea to, you know, force a Chaos Lord or a Raiders unit or a Lord Discordant into, you know, combat. So we'll just not give them the extra movement and we'll not shoot them. It does incentivize your opponent to basically focus fire, so they're going to try and wipe the unit most of the time. They don't really want to take too much or cripple it. They're going to be like, right, okay, let's focus this one down because we don't want them getting near us. It also doesn't specify you can... let me double check. Yeah, it does, yeah, never mind, ignore me. So again, moving d6 inches closer to the unit, you can choose to do it like here, as I mentioned, so that's both good and bad. So it's good because if they have something which can kill your unit, you'll be able to throw survivors possibly into engagement range and do some damage. So if you've got, I don't know, guardsmen in front of you trying to move block you, and they've got, you know, the Rogel Dawn tanks or, you know, whatever tanks shooting at your unit, let's say you get lucky on the saves and you save a couple of people and they're still alive. After that unit's done shooting, you can then, you know, potentially surge move into the guardsman, and then you can no longer be shot at, which is, again, that saves you in that circumstance. It's very case by case basis. Alternatively, if they have shot at your unit and you can move into combat with another unit from your opponent's army, they can no longer shoot you. However, if it's bad, because sometimes your opponent will bait you into moving a unit out of cover. So for example, if I move a unit of Tormentors 7 or 8 inches away from a unit of Raiders, which are hoping to hide behind cover and line of sight blocking terrain in order to, you know, jump me the next turn, I'll shoot at the unit in hopes that they'll use the surge move and bait them out of cover, so a nearby squad of Noise Marines can shoot them and probably wipe the unit. However, you still, in this circumstance, will have the advantage because you can choose to do it or not. Alternatively, you can just decide to sit there and get shot at by Tormentors and then a couple of other people. If it's like a Noise Marine unit, you definitely want to use it. So again, it's there if you need it, but again, it's very case by case basis. It's still an 8 out of 10 though, it's still really good. Next up we have Seize the Prize. This is your movement phase just after a Heretic Astartes unit, excluding monsters and vehicles from your army, has been selected to advance. Heretic Astartes unit auto advances 6 inches to the move characteristic. It's Honor the Prince from the old Emperor's Children Codex. It's auto advance 6 inches. Fantastic for securing distance and more reliable charges. So you can use this with the advance and charge, which is really, really good. It is used in the movement phase though, so it's not, you know, at the end of the movement phase. It's just after you've been selected to advance. So basically, if you want to choose it, you can do, which is it's very helpful. Works on damned units, so AC/DC are really going to like this. Again, auto advancing, advance and charge, and obviously getting the auto advance 6 means that would-be range is now concrete, and it allows you to hit places where you didn't think you'd be able to, or get to, you know, certain areas on an objective, contest a mid-board, wherever you need them for, they can do. More, like I said here, this makes them get into melee more reliably, which is exactly what you're looking for. Doesn't work on monsters or vehicles again, so Demon Princes are sat in the corner crying, Chaos Spawn are crying, your vehicles are crying, all that kind of thing. Having the ability to advance 6 inches flat on a Vindicator would be fantastic. But you know, we can't have everything good. Even a Mauler Fiend or a Forge Fiend, something that wants to get fairly close to an enemy or better into, you know, better positions to shoot at them, you can't do that, I'm afraid. So Lord Discordants can benefit from this though, because they're not a monster or vehicle. 14-inch move, 6-inch advance, and possibly charging after that presents a huge threat range for a very hard-hitting unit. This very helpful if you have. If you don't want to use the Eager for Bloodshed enhancement on him. Granted, the Lord Discordant will have a lot harder time getting places if you don't, because he is quite difficult to hide. Alternatively, the Lord Discordant with this stratagem, in case, like, let's say you bring a second one, you've still got this to use, which is always helpful. And you get it for free on a Lord for the unit leader. So if you decide that you want to auto advance 6 inches to get onto a point, you can do that. If you want to use this for free and then, you know, the advance and charge, or vice versa for free, then you've got a command point you can spend on that. And then obviously, you know, when you're in combat, you don't really care at that point. You'll probably just be beating the shit out of stuff. Quite helpful on Terminators as well, because, you know, 5-inch move and then a 6-inch auto advance brings it up to 11, which is really helpful. And Possessed are lightning fast anyway, so you just want them to, you know, get between 14 to 15 inches of movement guaranteed. And then obviously advancing and charging off that means that they are able to go through ruins, and they rival a Lord Discordant and Demon Prince with wings in terms of speed, which is scary for someone who's on the receiving end of that. Last but not least, we have Encircling Surge. This is the end of your opponent's fight phase. One Heretic Astartes unit, excluding monsters and vehicles from your army that is within 6 inches of one or more of the battlefield edges and not within engagement range or one or more enemy units. Move the unit from the battlefield and place it into strategic reserves. So being able to remove a unit and deploy them elsewhere on the board edge, it's really, really good. Like, it's so good. I've given it a 7 out of 10 though, and there's a reason as to why. In T3, if your opponent hasn't screened their backline or deployment zone adequately, you can get a unit there to take the home objective or disrupt them from scoring. So bikers, this used to be the original biker rule, which I don't know why they took it off. In addition, you can also get obliterators, which are very good for this. You can, you know, sneak behind cover, get on their objective, and then just shoot them from all sides. And obviously they'll get the +1 to hit too, which is very helpful, so that damage is definitely going to get through. Can be game changing if done at the right moment, as primary denial is necessary to win. So what I mean by primary denial is, if your opponent's sticking the back objective and they've screened it in properly, because the deep strike on the obliterators, you don't have to do it strategic reserves, you can just put them anywhere on the battlefield so long as they're 9 inches away. They don't really care if it's in the deployment zone, so you can do that, deep strike them on the deployment zone, and then, you know, shoot at whatever you need to, and then potentially charge the unit on the objective, and you're probably going to kill it. It's so helpful to have. Like, it's a very good utility tool. Again, it doesn't work on vehicles or monsters, which would be a bit too strong if it did. So no strat reserve in a Vindicator or a Demon Prince, or even a Chaos Spawn if you wanted to do that. Like I said, it can be used on mounted units, so Lord Discordant can do it, which is very helpful. Bikers too are going to really like this, because they're exceptionally fast and great at killing units. They're also quite cheap at 70 points, which is really worthwhile. They're normally good at holding backline objectives like cultists. They're normally good at killing units that hold backline objectives, so if you, for example, had cultists on that backline or guardsmen, then any kind of like T3 you know, 1 wound infantry that you don't really give a fuck about. Even like heavy intercessors, you're still going to do quite a lot of damage. It's like on a Lord Discordant, you're going to run at them, wound them on 2s, 5 attacks at strength 8 minus 3 damage plus the extra attacks anyway. You're more than likely going to kill that unit. And again, any failed is 3 damage, so it's just a kill on the spot. You may not use this stratagem every game, but if it's there if you need it, and it'll be very unlikely your opponent is going to want to have to, you know, basically you force your opponent to make a move. Like I said, you're proactive. If your opponent hasn't screened or, you know, properly positioned, then if you're able to take advantage of that and get you know, they're not going to want a Lord Discordant running around in the back line, because it's just something that your Lord Discordant's that quick, it can just kill whatever's in the back line, and then you know, hammer and anvil, where it'll come from behind and the rest of your army moves up and just smashes into it. But yeah, like I said here as well, Standout on Obliterators, I think it's fantastic. It gives them that ability to basically appear out of nowhere and just start shooting. Granted, your opponent will probably know how to screen against Obliterators. If they know you can do this, they will be playing extra cautiously, as I would. So you might not get anything from it, but again, it's very difficult to permanently stop someone deep striking something unless you've got like 9 million units on the board. But yeah, again, AP 3, 4 damage flat, anti-vehicle shooting. If you want anti-infantry, they've got that. If you want anti-chaff, they've got that. Just super, super strong, and I really like it. You could probably bump this to an 8, maybe even a 9, but I think 7, because sometimes you're not always going to use this, and that's the only reason why it's not higher. So, standout units and combos, Huron Black Art, so to nobody's surprise, Huron, the guy who the detachment's named after, is actually auto-included in this detachment, in my opinion. If it wasn't already a dead giveaway, the primary reason is for the rule. So, having, you know, both of your units both of your detachment rules on all of your infantry units, just really helpful. It's also quite durable, so it's T5, 3 up armor, 4 up invul, 5 up feel no pain, and 5 wounds. And while he's 200, I can't get my words out today. While he is 120 points on his own, he's definitely being added to the list as a warlord, so he's thematic and practical, which is a great combo. He's an incredibly hard-hitting model as well. 6 attacks at strength 8 minus 3 damage, so that's Lucius the Eternal's profile for reference. And he has a great pistol flamer, so you can use this in combat in the shooting phase if you're stuck in combat. D6 plus 2 at strength 6 minus 1 damage. Super good at killing chaff, like T3, you know, t-shirt armor saves, anything like that, shreds them. Great at killing Eldari. Any kind of 3 damage is always appreciated, as he can shred through elite infantry that are 3 wounds. And obviously he can, you know, sometimes on the off chance he can take a chunk out of a tank because it's high AP. It's the melter thing, where it's like, it's high AP, you'll probably be wounding on 5s into tanks, but again, the high AP means to save it on either a 5 or a 6, and then if any of those fail, it's 3 damage, which is just, again, I don't need to explain why that's great. It also grants +1 OC to every Heretic Astartes infantry within 6 inches that isn't damned or battle shocked. So you've already got OC 2 on Traitor Guardmen, you've already got Legionaries, Red Corsairs Raiders. Red Corsairs Raiders can go up to OC 4 if you kill a unit and have this guy next to him, which is just really, really helpful. Again, mid-board is basically yours if you get this guy to mid-board. It's just nasty to get rid of him. Next up we have the Lord Discordant, as I mentioned earlier, with the Eager for Bloodshed, so 190 points, so it is expensive, but it's well worth doing. Having such a threatening unit being able to reliably get a turn 1 charge off is great. Can punch into vehicles really well and move block by proxy, as his base is oval, so much like bikers, it's quite easy to manoeuvre in a position where you make use of unit coherency, and you can essentially string out the bikers. Lord Discordant operates a very simple way of just turn sideways and just cover as much surface area as you can. Granted, opponent can position around it, but they'll usually be at a disadvantage. Like I said, you're being proactive, not reactive. Works very well for staging too, because if your opponent knows that you've not got, you know, you've got like 1 or 2 Red Corsair Raiders squads, you're not really going to give a fuck. But if you've got a unit, those 2 units and the Lord Discordant, they're going to reconsider it. So again, it's forcing your opponent to make bad decisions move, which is always something I appreciate. Obviously, he can be killed, he's not impossible to kill, and granted, your opponent is going to focus him. As soon as you get a chance to shoot this guy, he's definitely going to get shot, because he's only, what, T9? Off the top of my head, I can't remember his data sheet, but he's not durable at all. But yeah, next up we have Obliterators. Obliterators are slowly becoming a favourite unit of mine. I actually really quite like them in this detachment. They benefit from both rules because they're infantry, so +1 to hit means they're very, very unlikely to get stuck in combat and will consistently be dealing damage, as well as a fallback and shoot and charge, which is just super, super strong. They can use Encircling Surge to redeploy, as mentioned earlier, so providing that you have the command points available, helps mitigate the weakness of their awful 4-inch move. They're also able to use At the Tyrant's Command for the advance and shoot too, making them perform how they would in Renegade Raiders, minus the extra AP when shooting stuff on objectives. They also provide us with great anti-vehicle shooting, which is something that this detachment will lack, and will provide, probably do more damage on average with the +1 to hit, stopping them from being tied up in combat like I mentioned earlier. I would bring 1 or 2 units in every list. I think these are a standout. They're really, really good in this detachment. And next up we have the Rhino and the Chaos Lord with Raid Leader enhancement and Legionaries. Fairly straightforward. Unit is essentially a lead and they'll get Assault Ramp for the Rhino. Opens up a lot of movement tricks, significantly increases threat range and allows them to support the T1 skirmishers in your army a lot easier. So if you have a Lord Discordant up with a couple of Raider Corsairs, infiltrating, skirmishing, blocking, etc., these guys can then jump in and add to that. And obviously you're keeping your opponent in the deployment zone and stopping them from scoring in the early turns, stopping them from doing secondaries, just throwing a proverbial spanner in the works, for lack of a better word. So while I do think Land Raiders are actually quite good, it's a lot easier to just take this for 275 points. You can also add a squad of Noise Marines if you want to as well, so the Rhino can, advance, shoot. Sorry, no, it can't advance and shoot, sorry, ignore me. You can put it in the Rhino, move up, these guys can then disembark. The Rhino will then use Firing Deck, and Noise Marines can then, Noise Marines can get out and get the +1 to hit. With Blast Masters, it's just fantastic. I mean, like I said, as an Emperor's Children player, Noise Marines are exceptionally good. They're very, very helpful. Alternatively, you can just keep them in the Rhino and just keep them alive, which is probably what you want to do. And again, Dart Packs on if they're in the line. I can't get my words out. If they're in the Rhino, they will get Dart Packs. If not, they'll get the +1 to hit. And potentially fall back and shoot and charge, which again is the main reason why they're so strong in Emperor's Children, because you can fall back, shoot another unit with the Sonic Blasters and Blast Masters, and then your other units can charge them. But that restriction's not here for this one. You can shoot the unit that you've fallen back from and charge into the same one if you wish to. Next up we have Warp Talons. So Warp Talons are a personal favourite unit of mine. They're obviously play as they normally would, so rapid ingress, charge, kill, and then jump. And +1 to hit. Excuse me. +1 to hit and +1 attack if you're using Reaver's Flurry is great. So they have 4 attacks each, 4 rerolls to wound, +1 to hit, and I'd advise bringing a unit of 10. They are expensive. I think they're 270 points, I think, off the top of my head. But they're, again, anyone can speak to how strong they are when you do bring them. They are really, really, really helpful to have. They're a very good kill unit. Alternatively, if you need a 5-man deep strike unit, then you can bring a unit of Raptors and actually deal a surprising amount of damage now, because Raptor melee is significantly improved. But at that point, just bring Warp Talons. I'd just bring Warp Talons. Next, we have Possessed. So Possessed are very good in this detachment. They're a sleeper hit, in my opinion. So especially +1 to hit, more reliable attacks. You can get the +1 attack as well, like I said. It's the same reason with Warp Talons. +1 to hit, +1 attack. Just run at something and just try and spike the dev wounds. The more attacks you get, the more chances there are to, get dev wounds, and the more accurate you are, the more chances there are to get dev wounds, because it means more attacks. Again, just super, super fun to play as well. Possessed to look amazing. Finally, we have the Red Corsairs Raiders. So these are a new unit, so I could be overestimating them or underestimating them. 5 for 110 points. So you get 1 Melter Gun, and you also get 1 Power Fist on the champion. But I'll be honest, they're 3 wounds each, so that's really good. But then again, the problem is there's a lot of 3 damage weaponry out there, and these guys are just T4, 3 up armor, so they're not going to survive, like a Forge Fiend shooting them, for example. Decent melee profile as well, so 4 attacks each at strength 5 -1 damage. And obviously the Power Fist with 4 attacks at strength 8 -2 damage. Hitting on 2s most of the time, potentially advance and charge. They just really, really like being in this detachment. Infiltrators, again, it's the only other than, like I said here, other than what's it called, Deceptors detachment, you can't get infiltrators in Chaos Space Marines. these guys can now help, which is unfortunate for Alpha Legion players, if you ask me, because Alpha Legion's entire shenanigan for the detachment has now just been nullified completely. Granted, you still do get like the Lord in Alpha Legion, but again, it's the main reason why you like the infiltrators is primarily for the scoring. In addition to this, it can also act as move blockers for your opponent's scout moves. Good counters to enemy infiltrators because they will kill scouts, and if the opportunity presents itself, potentially rushing your opponent's home objective to contest it if it's poorly defended, because they've got a rule where if they kill something, they get +1 OC if they're not battle shocked, so that's OC 3 per guy, that's 15 OC points for a unit of 5. And obviously these guys are going to be taking casualties, so you really do want that extra OC if you are contesting. I would personally put them to 100 points for 5, though I do think they're a bit too expensive at the minute. So the strengths and weaknesses, I'll try to keep this short. So strengths, +1 to hit from range and melee is very nice army-wide buff for the infantry. Having our infantry hit on 2s is very nice, as I'm sure people who have played Creations of Bile can agree with. So more reliable hits equals more reliable damage. Helps with the lords, so obviously they're hitting on 2s instead of 3s, which means, again, the primary damage dealer in infantry squads is usually the lord with the demon hammer. You want him to make sure he hits as hard as possible and as frequently as possible. Can be quite redundant for models which already hit on 2s, but it also counters -1 to hit from range and melee, so that's also helpful. Granted, it would be better if it was on vehicles, so +1 to hit would be nice on vehicles because it counters smoke. But if you are +1 to hit from shooting, so like Havocs for example, anything that would, well, Havocs already ignore any modifiers anyway, so they automatically hit on 3s. Obliterators really like this for the you know, any kind of indirect fire. You're hitting on 4s anyway. I don't know if that +1 to hit goes on the hitting on 3s instead, but I would say no because it's indirect. But if someone pops smoke on a Rhino, for example, then you can just hit on 2s anyway, they're wasting the command point. And again, like I mentioned earlier, +1 attack, +1 to hit, Warp Talons, Possessed, Chosen, Terminators, Legionaries, and any other kind of like infantry variant is going to really like that. Next up, it's the fall back and shoot and charge, just really good utility. One of our units is tied up in combat, there's no reason to continue fighting, you should fall back and let the unit and the rest of your army shoot at whatever's in the way and then charge again. Unfavourable combats can now turn into scoring opportunities, so that's always something you want to keep in mind. Makes damn units a lot more viable, so again this is arguably the traitor guardsman detachment, hitting up to ballistic skill 2, ballistic skill 3, and then potentially going to a 3-up armor saving cover against a 0 AP can be clutch when used appropriately. You can also get the +1 attack on AC/DC units with a stratagem, and torments are going to just be, you know, ripping stuff to pieces pretty much. Excellent stratagem support. Detachment has a lot of fantastic movement and board control tricks, so redeploying infantry within 6 inches of a battlefield edge into strat reserves, reactive moves on Huron and his unit, Red Corsairs Raiders with infiltrators for T1 skirmishing and objective capturing, D6 surge move after being shot, advance and charge, auto advance in 6, being able to infiltrate a Lord Discordant with an enhancement, charging out of a Rhino that has moved with the Lord and Legionary unit with the Raid Leader enhancement. There's just a lot of things you can do which help you get to where you need to be or stop your opponent from doing what they need to do. And you don't need to castle units, so you can have quite a far spread out army, which is great because it means more board control. Something like a Baden, for example, you'll normally want to keep him close to your units to get the benefit of his aura, so most of the time it's going to be the reroll hits for the damage. But with +1 to hit, you can kind of like not really care. Like reroll hits is still better on paper, but +1 to hit is just, it's one of them things where if you miss, it's not that bad. Whereas with reroll hits, you're expecting to do a lot more damage, but then again you have to castle a unit to get the benefit of it, which is not something you can do feasibly in every game. And this offers a lot more, you know, MSU support where you don't have to rely on being next to a Baden to do damage. You can just do your own little thing. Granted, you won't do as much damage, but it's still very viable. Unfortunately, we do have weaknesses, so there's no help to vehicles. Chaos Space Marines also have some very good vehicle options, so it's not really pleasant to tell that this detachment did literally nothing to support them. Other than the Rhinos that you're obviously going to bring, you might want to bring a Predator or a Vindicator to offer some range fire support for your infantry. But a majority of the time your infantry are going to be, you know, dealing with your opponent, and unfortunately, fairly easy to kill as infantry, as I mentioned further down here. Most of the lists at the minute are geared to killing towards elite infantry, so 3 to 4 wounds. Anything that can reliably semi-reliably kill them are going to chew through our infantry, and that's just how it is. So once that goes away, you'll have a much better time. Your main damage is going to be AP 2 infantry around strength 4 to strength 8. So another issue with this is you're going to struggle into vehicles unless you bring something that can deal with them appropriately. Red Corsairs, Raiders, Rhinos, and lots of other options we do have are going to struggle into T10 or higher. So like Catan, Rogal Dawn tanks, they're usually the big ones that we're going to have to worry about. Or T11. So like, oh, I've mentioned that then, ignore me. So thankfully you can just bring vehicles with high strength shooting to help, but they definitely won't be as fast as our infantry. Army is built very similar to Emperor's Children, where you can posture and skirmish turn 1 and then go all in on turn 2 and turn 3 to hopefully table your opponent or cripple them to the point where they can't recover, which is high risk, high reward. Obviously we do have obliterators that can kind of fill that gap in, but I wouldn't rely on them. They are very strong though. If a unit falls back and ends up out of Huron's line of sight, they'll still lose the additional detachment rule, like I've mentioned. I'm not going to go over that because I've already mentioned it. Lack of rerolls in the detachment as well. We don't really have any ways to get rerolls other than data sheet rolls, but that's not too bad. Like I said earlier, you're not really gonna. It's nice. I mean, I'd rather have rerolls to hit, like I said, but +1 to hit, I ain't gonna complain. It's there. In addition, as well, your opponent is definitely going to focus Huron down, so you'll almost always make sure Huron's got line of sight on a majority of the army to get the benefits, but then that puts him at a risky position. If he's in an elevated position, for example, he's still going to get a shot. If your opponent draws assassination, there's even more reason for your opponent to focus him down, so Huron can be used as bait sometimes, but it's not potentially worth risking him dying. So here's a quick list. As I mentioned, I'm going to keep these lists simpler in future, like this, because it's a lot easier to digest. You want Huron Blackheart. He's going to be leading the Masters of the Maelstrom. I'm not going to get into them because I do not want to read that absolute odyssey of data sheets, unfortunately. So for those who are wanting to know what they do, I do apologise. But the Masters of the Maelstrom essentially can provide command point regeneration, which is the big one, if they're next to a unit that is below half strength, including its own unit. In addition, they can also have very good anti-character stuff. So I think we have one of the head takers is anti-character 2 up, which is super good. But yeah, they're going to be in a Rhino. We also have another Rhino with a Chaos Lord in it, with a Raid Leader enhancement. He's going to be leading 5 Legionaries. And then we have the Lord Discordant with the 190 point price tag. So again, he's pretty expensive, but you do get Eager for Bloodshed. We have 2 squads of 5 Red Corsairs Raiders, 3 bikers, sorry, 1 squad of 3 bikers, 10 Warp Talons, 2 squads of 2 Obliterators each, 5 Chosen, and in addition to that we also have a squad of Noise Marines. So the thing is with this enhancement, oh sorry, as well we have the Cultists, I forgot, my apologies. You can kind of mix and match this. It is a fairly new detachment, so this is probably going to get optimized at some point, but I do think you might not see Red Corsairs Raiders. I'll be honest, I'm a bit finicky about them. If your opponent can't really deal with it, then they're gonna like do quite a lot of damage, but the trade-off is that, you know, 3 wound infantry T4, if they've got 3 damage, you can quite easily kill it. If I was to change it, you could probably take the Noise Marines out. So the Chosen are also going to be led with Huron's Maelstrom as well. If I'm not mistaken, Huron can lead the Maelstrom, Master of the Maelstrom and Chosen, so you get the advance and charge, or a fallback shoot and charge without needing the actual rule. So most of the time you're going to be doing the +1 to hit. Again, like I mentioned, you get kind of pigeonholed into that rule. You can change it around a bit if you want to bring some, you know, if you want to take a Red Corsairs Raider squad out, because you do have 25 points left over. You can take out the Noise Marine squad, bring another squad of Obliterators if you want to. You know, mix and match, take Red Corsairs Raiders out, bring another squad of Bikers. I do think, as an Emperor's Children player, I normally just bring 2 Tormentors, but that's because they're quite cheap, they're only 85 points. 110 points is where you're starting to get a bit, you know, this is too expensive, you can bring a vehicle. If you really wanted to, you could honestly take out the Noise Marines, and then take out a squad of Red Corsairs Raiders, and bring, you know, a Land Raider, or some kind of, you know, vehicle, like a Vindicator, Extra chosen, for example, you can add an extra squad of chosen, an extra 10 chosen that can be led with a lord. There's a lot of variety to the list. Where would I rank it though? It's a 9 out of 10. I think this is going to be an incredibly good detachment. I was debating putting it about 8 because the lack of vehicle support is really bad. I'm not going to lie, but while at the moment I think it's going to be a bit difficult to run these because of the fact that there's so many ways for it to die, like Space Marine 2-3 wound infantry to just get shredded. We don't have any defensive stratagems that rely on just tanking shots, so like no -1 to hit, no you know, like armor of contempt, for example. Like we can't negate damage, we just have to move out the way and then just run at whatever we need to damage, basically. No feel, no pain, none of that other than go to ground, but that's more of a general stratagem. Like it's very offensive and movement oriented. Like I said here, it overwhelmingly makes up for it with exceptionally good movement tricks, great infantry focus support via the detachment rule, enhancements and stratagems. At the moment, the meta isn't favouring 2 wound, 3 wound Space Marine style infantry, so it may run into a lot of issues at the moment, but when that eventually will fade, and it will do, you've got a lot of utility and some damage improvements to not feel too bad. Feels very similar to Creations of Bile in some way, so +1 to hit from range, and in melee, which you'll be using most of the time, is literally one of the augmentations you have access to, except you'll get that in weapon skill or ballistic skill, so it's technically better. But again, most of the time you're going to, if you have the choice between improving your ballistic skill or weapon skill in Chaos Space Marines, you're improving the the weapon skill like almost all the time. You also get the +1 attack in melee when you need it for a command point, or free if using it for a Chaos Lord, which rivals Creations of Bile in terms of damage output. I still think Creations of Bile do hit hard, so like I've said here, the two sides of the same coin. Creations of Bile focuses more on sheer damage, rushing your opponent, and having some utility, whereas Huron's Marauders focuses a lot more on the utility and movement trick, while still having a Creations of Bile damage is like, I'd say like a 9 out of 10, whereas these guys are like a 7. Like they're still like hit decently hard, but Creations of Bile are just gonna be a hammer, whereas the Huron's Marauders are going to be more of a scalpel. But yeah, if you're the type of player that loves to play objective, being fast, difficult to catch, and having very good damage on your infantry, then this is definitely a detachment for you. I really, really think this detachment's going to come into its own within the next couple of months. At least I'm hoping so. With that said though, thank you for watching. Please like the video if you've learned anything, or you've just enjoyed watching or listening to it, you know, while you're doing something in the background. If you feel like my videos warrant your patronage, then please feel free to subscribe and share the video. Any kind of share, boosts me in the algorithm, so you know, hopefully, fingers crossed, I will get to 1,000 subscribers roughly by the end of the year. I'm hoping at least 600, but I'm aiming for 1,000. If you've got any chaos groups on something like Facebook or Instagram or any kind of social media, and you feel like this would be appropriate, then like I said, feel free to send some people my way. It allows me to benefit from discussing a lot of stuff with arguably better chaos players than myself. But yeah, either way, I hope you're having a good day or night wherever you are in the world. I hope you're healthy and safe, and always remember, praise the dark gods. Cheers, guys.